Good evening and welcome to Biz In Focus. I'm Zeenat Musafir. Now, most people are familiar with the term stock market, but do they know the functions of a stock market and a Securities Exchange Commission and the role it plays in society? Well, to talk about this and much more, joining us this evening is the Senior Professor of Finance at the University of Sri Jawatanapura Kotte and the former Director General of the Securities and Exchange Commission, Professor Disa Bandara. Good evening, Professor.
Good evening.
Professor, so as I mentioned at the start, many people know the term stock market, but what is the role it plays in society and what are the objectives of a stock market and the functions?
In Sri Lanka, we have one stock market. It is called Colombo Stock Market, CSE. So, stock market is like any other market where the people, those who want to buy and sell, meet. So, stock market is a place where the people, those who want to buy shares and sell shares, they meet in a place or a situation that's called the stock market. So, Colombo stock market is it has a history of more than 100 years, and we have a regulated market since 1986. So, with that, Sri Lanka, we have the opportunity to sell and buy shares in a regulated market where people can buy and sell shares of listed companies. So, that's about.
What role does the Securities and Exchange Commission play?
In a capital market, there are basically four segments. One is the investors. Second one is the issuers, we call the companies who issue shares. The third one is the operator facilitate trading, buy and sell. So, the third element is the regulator. So, Securities and Exchange Commission is the capital market regulator.
Professor, so we talk about the primary market and the secondary market.
Yeah.
So, what exactly is the primary market? And in terms of us, if the general public wants to purchase shares, do we deal with the primary market or the secondary market?
So, primary market means when a company issues its fresh share, the first share issue. So, then you buy shares directly from the company. So, it's a direct sale. So, you buy shares from the company. So, there is no intermediary. So, therefore, it is a primary market. Secondary market means once you get shares, so you have shares with you, and similarly there are many other people, those who have shares. So, secondary market is the marketplace for the people, those who have shares. They exchange shares for money. So, that's how secondary market operates.
Professor, so when it comes to dealing with broker companies, we tend to obtain information from analysts who are connected to such broker companies. So, do you think if you are planning on investing in company shares, should we seek the advice of such broker companies or should we do our own research?
So, let me explain it this way. Both are important. Stock brokers in Sri Lanka, brokering firms, they offer investment advice also. So, investment advisors, they have a license from the Securities and Exchange Commission, and it's monitored by the Colombo Stock Exchange. So, these brokers definitely provide investment advisors in line with the regulations and the professional standards. Therefore, we have 30 brokers basically, 15 or legally 14 members and 12 other trading members and 3 other debt trading members. So, when you take all these around 30 people, 30 broking houses, they must provide a similar service wherever you go. So, you can select one or more than one brokers for your trading purposes, investment purposes. So, they will advise you how to buy, how to sell, how to select a share and so on. Meantime, we recommend to read the stock market research. So there are many brokers, they provide market research papers, you can refer them as well. So if you have any idea and knowledge to analyze and to determine whether you must invest your own, so you can do so. Therefore, number one, you can trust your broker, and you also must have a proper understanding about the market and your returns, and if you are not satisfied with the return, you should be able to adjust your portfolio accordingly.
Once a company lists in the stock exchange, what are the obligations it needs to meet, and what are the consequences it will face in the event those obligations are not met?
Yeah. Now, earlier you mentioned about Securities and Exchange Commission, so the regulator, and the self-regulated organization as if you take CSC, both these organizations are under the regulation or the guidance, they work together and provide a framework. So within that framework, you need to, or the market need to work, the market participants have to work. Now, before you list your company, you have to satisfy certain requirements. Once it is satisfied, so secondly, you have to maintain that. So those are listing rules introduced by the Colombo Stock Exchange. You have to obey the maintenance part. So then you need to think about several aspects. So you must think about your regular announcements to the exchange if there is any material change. Then you have to release your quarterly accounts, then annual reports, and information about dividends, because that's your return. So likewise, there are 8-9 requirements, basically basic areas to be fulfilled. So financial aspect is one thing. So many other requirements, including governance. So your board of directors, your audit committee, remuneration committee, all these areas are covered in the latest listing rules. So therefore, you have to maintain or satisfy, or you have to comply with those continuous listing rules. So once you break any of them, so your company will be delisted.
About the obligations and talking about delisting, once a company is delisted, what happens to the shares and the shareholder of that company?
Yeah, now this delisting happened because of non-compliance. So once you comply, so it will be lifted. So meantime, in a delisted company, nothing will happen to the shareholder because his or her share percentage is there. So only thing is, now in a delisted company, people, buyers for such shares is very low, very hard to find. So therefore, you have a certain level of risk. So still, if the shareholder of that particular delisted company has any buyer, so he can still sell the shares. Only thing is, you can't trade that share in an exchange.
So once a company is delisted, Professor, can it be relisted as well?
Yes. As I told you, delisted company faced that unfortunate situation because of your non-compliance. Once you comply with that, that is why sometimes a company can be delisted due to non-compliance. But meanwhile, once you comply with that, so once you fulfill the requirement, so it can be relisted.
If a company chooses to stop trading at the stock exchange, in other words, if it chooses to go back to its private state, how do you remove yourself from the listing?
So for that, there's a process given in the regulation. Okay. So they have to inform the exchange. So it's a difficult problem because as you wish you can't do that, but there are certain conditions to be satisfied. So as per the regulation, they have to fulfill those, and they can withdraw from the market. Thing is, there are certain requirements mentioned. Why? Because that's existing shareholders will be in trouble. So, therefore, there must be room for them to exit.
Talking about insider trading, what exactly is insider trading, and how would an investor or a stakeholder or an analyst identify such trends that would lead to insider trading?
Insider trading is one of the offenses, and there is a section separately for insider dealing. If you refer the
Professor, is it a civil offence or is it a criminal offence?
It's a criminal offence. So, if you refer section, let me just give you the section, that is section 4 of the Securities and Exchange Commission Act, section 32 to 34, you have required provisions given. So, basically, just to give you an understanding, insider trading is dealing with price sensitive material information. So, if insiders may be the workers, employees, CEO, management, board of directors, not only inside the company, people those who are inside the company may be related people like auditors. So, they may have some information about the company financials, which is not available for general public. So, if you use that information for you to earn a profit or to avoid any further loss, so you are committed an offence called insider dealing. So, it's a terrible offence, and it is unfair, because 90%, 99% of the people, they do not have that information, but you use that piece of information for you to make a profit or to avoid any loss. So, that is an offence. So, it is a punishable offence in the market.
Adding to that question, if an investor or anyone within the stock market commits insider trading, what are the penalties or the legal consequences that they would have to face?
As I mentioned in the section 33A, any person found guilty of insider trading shall be liable on conviction after summary trial by magistrate to a sentence of imprisonment of either description for a period not exceeding 5 years, or to a fine not exceeding rupees 10 million, or to both such imprisonment and fine. So, that is the relevant section.
So, what are the measures in place to prevent insider trading within the Securities and Exchange Commission and the Stock Exchange?
So, basically insider trading, even though it is an offence, that is your ethics. So, awareness creation is number one. So, if you know the gravity, if you know what is improper, what is wrong, so you must educate people, and people will obey. That is number one. That is number one. Beyond regulation, you can do that. So, second thing is, once you at the Securities and Exchange level and the CSE level, if you notice any insider dealing, it should be investigated without any further delay. So, then you can take necessary action which are given in the act as the provision. So, then there is a confidence in the market, there is no insider dealing and there is no room, and people who is responsible for that duty, they will follow it up. So, that message will go. Then next thing is, insider dealing can be mainly inside the company. I gave you a list: employees, managers, CEO, accountant, auditors. So, we can educate them, and there must be a whistleblowing process. If you feel that, if you guess something can happen, so immediately that should be addressed within the company. So, you can minimize in that way. And I think even though this is section 33A gives 1 million, 10 million, I think in time to come we should increase it, otherwise people make profit from this.
Professor, so before we wrap this interview, what is the advice that you would give an investor, someone who is hoping to invest in the stock exchange for the first time? What is your advice to them?
My advice is, if you are a first comer, first start with unit trust. So, unit trust investment, so your investment will be handled by a set of professional fund managers. So, therefore, they are well trained, they know the subject, and they will help you. At the meantime, you can start with small money. Come to the stock market and seek the advice from the investment advisors, and next step is read the investment research, so securities research from released by, so we have about 10-15 reports in the market, so you can refer them, and meantime you also can study. So it is not rocket science. So, many other countries, we have very developed stock markets. So in the same way in Sri Lanka we can have a share owning community in Sri Lanka. So it is very healthy for the Sri Lanka to formulate capital inside the country. So therefore what we have to do is we must get the education. So for that I think Colombo Stock Exchange, they have a program, investment programs. There are many awareness programs, and Securities and Exchange Commission also conducts several programs. So you can register one of them. So you can start from the initial course, and those courses are maybe covering few hours to several few months. So you can take those, and on the internet there are many sites, investment related sites. Investopedia is the one of the sites. So likewise, if you Google it, you will find many places where you can get information about how to invest in the share market. So you can find many information.
Thank you, Professor, very much for that comprehensive, detailed explanation about the stock exchange, about the Securities and Exchange Commission, and how the operations that takes place. Joining us this evening was the Senior Professor of Finance at the University of Sri Javadanapura Kotte and the former Director General of the Securities and Exchange Commission, Professor Disa Bandara. Thank you once again, Professor, for joining us.
Thank you, Sina.